Hey everyone, today we're going to learn about a band called Chicago. You may have heard of this group if your parents listens to this band. They're still popular today, you might even hear them on the radio and not even know you hear them. Let's start learning about them. So, who is Chicago? This is an overview of them. Now, Chicago is an American rock band formed in 1967 in Chicago, Illinois, calling themselves the Chicago Transit Authority after they called themselves the Big Thing in 1968, before shortening their name to just Chicago in 1969. The rock and roll band with horns blended elements of classical music, jazz, R&B, and pop music. In September of 2008, Billboard ranked Chicago at number 13 in a list of the top 100 artists of all time. Chicago is one of the longest running, most successful rock groups and one of the world's best-selling groups of all time, having sold more than 100 million records worldwide. Chicago was the first rock act to sell out Carnegie Hall for a week straight in 1971. To date, Chicago sold over 40 million albums in the US with 23 gold, 18 platinum, and 8 multi-platinum albums, and again 100 million worldwide. They have 5 #1 albums on the Billboard 200 in a row and 20 top 10 singles total on the Billboard Hot 100. In 1974, the group had all 7 albums, which was their entire catalog of music at the time, on the Billboard 200 simultaneously. The group had received 10 Grammy Award nominations and won one of them for the song If You Leave Me Now. The group's first album, Chicago Transit Authority, released in 1969, was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2014. Chicago, the band, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2016. In 2017, band members Peter Cetera, Robert Lamm, and James Pankow were added to the Songwriters Hall of Fame for their songwriting efforts. Chicago also received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award October 16th, 2020. Another fun photo of them, this time in color. Can totally tell it's back in the day and dated. All right, now, the group now known as Chicago began February 15th, 1967, at a meeting involving a saxophonist Walter Parazaider, guitarist Terry Kath, drummer Danny Serafine, trombonist James Pankow, trumpet player Lee Loughnane, and keyboardist singer Robert Lamm. Kath, Parazaider, and Serafine had played together previously in 2 other groups, Jimmy Ford and the Executives, and The Missing Links. Parazaider, Pankow, and Loughnane met as students at DePaul University, and Lamm was recruited from his group, Bobby Charles and the Wanderers. The group of 6 called themselves The Big Thing first, and like most other groups playing in Chicago nightclubs, played top 40 hits and realized that they needed a tenor singer and a bass player because the organ bass pedals did not give enough bass sound. So local tenor and bassist Peter Cetera was invited to join them late in 1967. So The Big Thing and Chicago Transit Authority, again, the 2 names they gave themselves before they changed it to Chicago. So while they were growing as a cover band, the group began working on original songs. And in June of 1968, The Big Thing moved to Los Angeles, California, signed with Columbia Records, and changed its name to Chicago Transit Authority. While performing regularly at the Whiskey A Go Go nightclub in West Hollywood, the band got exposure to famous musical artists of the time, and they became the opening act for Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, which are big rock and roll artists, or rock artists. You may have heard of them if your parents, again, listen to that music. Okay, now, their first record in April of 1969, Chicago Transit Authority, is a double album, which is rare for a band's first release. The album made it to number 17 on the Billboard 200 album chart, sold over 1 million copies by 1970, and was awarded a platinum disc. The album included a number of pop rock songs, titled Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is?, Beginnings, Questions 67 and 68, and I'm a Man, which were later released as singles. They were nominated for a Grammy for 1969's Best New Artist of the Year. The band was booked to perform at Woodstock in 1969, which was a big performance thing at the time. But their promoter they had a contract with rescheduled them to play at the Fillmore West for the Woodstock dates instead. Santana, a band their promoter also managed, took Chicago's place at Woodstock, and that performance is considered to be Santana's breakthrough gig. So I'm sure they weren't too happy about that. After the release of their first album, the band's name was shortened to Chicago to avoid legal action being threatened by the actual mass transit company of the same name out in Chicago. So silly. Here's a photo of their single, Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is? And that's the song we're going to learn and listen to today. So this song was included in their 1969 debut album, Chicago Transit Authority, and released as a single in 1970. The song was written and sung by Robert Lamb. This was the first song recorded for their debut album, and the song was not released as a single until 2 tracks from the band's second album, Make Me Smile and 25 or 6 to 4, had become hits. It became the band's 3rd straight top 10 single, peaking at number 7 in the US and number 2 in Canada. And in Canada, it ranked as both the 59th biggest hit of 1970 and the 37th biggest hit of 1971. Let's listen. So we get an idea. Um, I hope you enjoyed listening to that live performance. I try to find live performances because it's tougher to listen to if you're just listening to the music. But um, if you've heard of Chicago before, you might enjoy this music. If you've never heard him before, it might seem a little weird or a little different from what you usually listen to on the radio or what maybe just what you listen to in general. But I hope you got to enjoy it and learned a little something about them. And we'll get to learn more about them next time. So thanks for listening, and I will see you all next time.